Good evening and welcome back to World Talks. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're going to discuss cyber threats. Tonight we're taking a closer look at the growing concerns over cybersecurity issues in Europe and beyond. During this sensitive time with a full-fledged war going on in Ukraine, as well as the US presidential elections just around the corner, the number of cyber attacks appears to be increasing, even here in Poland. To discuss the scale of this phenomenon, as well as what is being done to counter it, I am joined here this evening by Igor Protasowicki, cybersecurity expert, WSB Merito University Warsaw. Good evening, sir. Delighted to have you.
Good evening and hello.
So let's start with the scale of this phenomenon. We've heard 400,000 cybersecurity incidents, attempts. How many of them are serious? How concerned shall we be?
400,000 revealed this year, and the numbers are really increasing quite rapidly, because when we consider and compare the numbers to the last year and a year before, we begin with more or less 100,000 attacks per year. Till now we have 9 months of this year already, 400,000, and I believe that we have the same amount ongoing till the end of this year. It's not very serious at the very same and at very exactly same incident. Because basically they differ between what sort of software was used and what was the scope of the attack. And we have to remember that one attack has the result of losing data or changing the real existing data to something else, while another is just infiltration and checking the system security levels. So it's all ongoing, and the numbers will increase.
Right. It's good that you sort of introduced this, let's say, division of different attacks. So I guess some are trying to get data out of a system, but some other attacks, or perhaps bots or some other attempts at spreading disinformation, that would be a completely different type of an attack, right?
Yes, exactly, because cybersecurity is one huge basket where you can put everything in and just mix it. What goes on the outcome, it's just the matter of imagination of the attack creators, because you can create everything as a software, whether you want it to work on behalf of humanity or you just want to make some harm or earn on it. Basically, sky is the limit, and thus you have everything in malicious software basically as the cover for it, and you can divide it between the software that you can send freely through the internet or the one you have to introduce to the particular systems using some removable devices. No matter what sort of proliferation you use, you can get the same results, like infiltration of no matter what kind of systems, including critical infrastructure, for example, which by the definition is not connected to the network. You can infiltrate private computers, and now those computers may belong to any citizen. It may be harmless from the society perspective, but if the system belongs to like a member of parliament or some prime minister or anybody else on the high position, we can be facing some really dangerous consequences.
So could we take a look at some of the case studies, not necessarily recent, but of some spectacular cyber attacks that took place and were not stopped? I mean, what did they lead to?
One of the most recent and loudest cyber attacks in Poland would be the malware exposition of CD Projekt Red. The company was attacked using the malware software. Its data was encrypted, and the attackers asked for ransom to decrypt any encrypted data. So Depending on the sources, one says that CD Projekt paid the ransom and received the data back, while the other sources say they did not and used the backup copies because it's one of the safest and one of the most reliable methods of securing your information.
Right, and how did it impact company stocks, for instance?
It did. Quite unfortunately, the stocks dropped for a moment, of course, because it regained its value. The data that was encrypted, it wasn't the most precious one because all the ongoing projects were not harmed in the process.
Right, but it would just be, it probably would be much more severe if it was pertaining to personal data of some individuals, or as you've mentioned, politicians, or perhaps some investigations, matters related to crime, or does such thing happen as well?
Yes, of course, but the cybersecurity does not apply only to the data. It can apply to what we are dealing with, face-to-face communication, or even electronic communication these days, because cyber criminals are using the most recent technology, which is available, which is not expensive, which is very easy to introduce, like today in the AI era. Cyber criminals are using dedicated software to manipulate people, to create fake personalities, to fake somebody else's personality, and that's how you can encounter some advertisements on the internet with the face and voice of the president or any other person in the world.
Right. Nowadays, I guess these things are becoming even more complex. But geographically, do we have, let's say, larger concentrations of hackers in certain countries than in others? How do they operate?
Unfortunately, yes, we do have larger concentration of hackers, mainly in underdeveloped countries, because that's the easiest way to earn bigger amounts of money, especially when you compare it to the rest of the labor market on that place. Plus, now when we are dealing full-scale military conflict behind our eastern border, we have to take into consideration some activities from behind the eastern border itself. Those activities are, of course, focused on Ukraine, but since Poland is one of the largest supporters of Ukraine, we are at the target of the criminals as well.
Right. So how shall we protect ourselves? I mean, of course, there are different levels, right? We have individual users, but then we have whole countries, we have public domains, right? So how does it work, the infrastructure? From
the most of the attacks that we can encounter ourselves, the easiest method to protect ourselves is to keep being conscious and watch very carefully what are we doing with our systems and what the systems are doing by themselves, whether they behave the same way they used to behave or something new was introduced to the behavior. Like when we're logging into the systems that we are using on a daily basis, can we log in with no problem, or something else happened and some other system is asking us to update our password or submit our password or do some other activities that we did not do before. That's a huge red light to take under consideration and check whether the system was not spoofed, whether it's not fake. The same applies to the messages that we receive from our friends, from colleagues from work, from the organizations that we are operating with, like the banks or our security managers. When they ask us to provide them with a different type of data than they asked us before, it means that something changed. And, you know, this world does not like changes. So that's another huge red light for us.
Right, and so from what I gathered, various countries cooperate, right, with one another in this realm. So what kind of cooperations are there? What kind of
In the process, of course, when we're talking about the national security and national security against cyber threats, we have dedicated forces that are working on like online and constantly on every single appearing new type of attack and new things that are dangerous in this cyber environment. So when anything appears within EU or in the world globally, different organizations and different agencies notify themselves like instantly. As soon as this threat is researched and as soon as we have ready answers to those threats. Same things applies to Polish forces. We send the information that we gathered and we receive the information from other agencies that we're cooperating with. And all the modern countries keep their own agencies in that matter.
Okay, sir. So if I'm not mistaken from what you just told me, the increased number of cyber threats in Poland stems from the fact that there is a war going on in Ukraine, right? What about the US in the upcoming elections? Do we see more of these kind of attempts over on the other side of the ocean?
We take the war as the event that emphasizes the amount of threats that are basically in the air right now. And the same applies to all the largest events that are going on in the world, in particular countries, like elections in the United States will, of course, obviously cause some increase in amount of attacks, like for example, increase in the amount of fake news that are being distributed around social networks and so on. Because, of course, fake information is one of the methods of attacks in cybercrime today.
Right. It is a very, very complex issue, but I'm glad you've managed to shed some light on this, at least on the basics of it. Igor Protasowicki, thank you, sir, for being
My pleasure.
Much appreciated. And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.